Hello, this is Aaron from Workflow86, and today we'll be showing you how to use the trigger a zap component. So the trigger a zap component essentially allows you to trigger a zap in Zapier at any point in your workflow. So in this example, we have a form, and as soon as this form is submitted, it will then trigger a zap in Zapier. In this case, we'll be setting it up to send a Slack notification to our Slack channel. So to get started, just drag and drop the trigger a zap component onto your canvas and then connect it up to the component at the stage where you want to trigger the zap. Let's take a look at the form just to understand this workflow. So inside of the form, you can see here that there's a field which says this is the message that will get sent to Zapier. This is just basically a long text field, and the data that's typed in here is what will get passed to Zapier, and then from Zapier will go into Slack. So let's go into setting up the trigger a zap component. And so we'll just introduce a couple of things, and probably what you want to do is also have Zapier on open in another tab as well. So first thing is just an introduction to a couple of things. So there's a component ID, there's a security token, and then there's the data payload to Zapier. You'll need this, and you'll need to generate a token in order to connect in with Zapier, and we'll show you that as we move into Zapier and actually get the setup. So on the Zapier side, we want to set up the zap that we want to trigger. So we'll look up Workflow86 as our trigger. And you can see here that that's Workflow86. We'll select trigger a zap as the trigger event. And then we'll need to log into our account. Now, you need to make sure that if you do have multiple Workflow86 accounts, if this particular workflow that you want to trigger a zap from is in one particular account, you need to log into that particular account. Otherwise it will not work. So in this case, we're just going to log into this particular account. So this is Aaron.Zapier. So Aaron.test. Sign in. And we are good to go. Alrighty, so now we are setting up the trigger on the Zapier side. So if we go back to our component, remember that there's a component ID here. So we just grab that and then we paste it in here. The next step is we need to generate a security token. So we click this to generate a token, and we can see our token here. Now this token is basically a key into your workflow. So you want to keep it very, very secure. When you generate a token, we actually only show you it once. So in this dialog, this is the only time you'll see this token and you'll be able to access this token. As soon as I click done, you will not be able to retrieve this token value. It will be gone. So that's one of the things where if you do lose this token, you'll need to regenerate it again. You can also click this to download the token as a plain text file if you need to store it somewhere. So I'm just going to copy and paste this into here, and then we click continue. Don't save. Alrighty, so before we go forwards, just to discuss something about the data payload and testing in Zapier. So what we'll do is we'll actually configure the data that we want to send to Zapier. So the key will be message, and the value will be the long text. This is the placeholder from the form that we want to send into. This third column called test value, this is the value that gets sent to Zapier at this stage. So if you click test trigger. Now, if you do want to test this trigger zap component at this stage, you will need to save this component and then actually publish it. If you don't publish it, it'll just get a generic sample test data, which we pre-configure as part of our Zapier app. But if you do actually want us to send Zapier this particular value or whatever test value you've typed in here, you do need to publish the workflow first. So in that case, we've published the workflow first. And so if we go back here and we click test trigger, you should see that there is our sample value, and that is the test value that's sent through. So with that, we know that everything's working well, and we can continue. And now we're up to the action. So really from this point onwards, you can connect it to anything. You can trigger a Zap, you can make a tweet. Let's say we want to send this as a message in Slack. So send a channel message, continue, pick the account. Select our channel. So let's select the Twitter channel that we have. And we'll say, here's a message from Workflow86. And then we'll insert the message here. So that will be the value that, that we sent in the form originally here. And let's send it as a bot. That's fine. Yep. That's right. Okay, cool. And now we should be ready to go. So you can test and review, you can test and continue. So we'll just test and continue just to make sure it's working okay. And now if we go into here, you can see that this is working here. So let's turn on the Zap. Alrighty, this Zap is now turned on. And so what will happen is that when we submit this form, it will trigger the Zap, and when it triggers the Zap, it will then post a message to Slack. So actually, let's run that right now. Let's just publish this first. So any changes get pushed in. Alrighty, this is a trigger a Zap test. Submit. And then if we go into here, there is our message via Zapier. And you can also test it by going into the Zap history here, and you should see the record of the Zap that we just made. So that is how to use our Trigger a Zap component. And this component essentially allows you to connect Workflow86 to any of the 3,000 plus apps inside of Zapier. And you can use this at any stage in your workflow. So in this case, it's a really simple example of, after the form is submitted, we trigger a Zap, but this could occur, after an assigned task stage. So, after a task is assigned, then trigger a Zap, push data into another app, whatever you want really. So it's pretty flexible as a tool. And its main benefit again is if you aren't really comfortable with setting up a connection using the API export or the API request and response components, this is a really easy non-technical way to do it using Zapier.